All right, Matt, here at Allegiant Stadium. A different thing for us this weekend. We covered the Buffs last night in Folsom Field in Boulder, and both of us hopped on a plane this morning. Just the opportunity to catch Shedeur Sanders in his first career NFL start, and didn't disappoint. He wasn't like, phenomenal, blow everybody away, but he got the job done, was efficient, and he got a win, something that a Browns rookie quarterback has not done in a very long time.
In a very long time. And Shadur was Shadur. He wasn't really sped up. He didn't really force too much. There was that early interception. Thought he bounced back well because there's a lot of times, look, I mean, let's just be honest here. This Browns receiving core might be the worst in all of football. They don't get very much separation, and there wasn't a lot of opportunities that he really decided to force the ball in there, right? Kind of learned from that interception. I thought maybe he was just trying to get Judy going there, and then look, he bounced back, settled down, and again, to your point, he wasn't a world beater. This wasn't the very best version of Shadur today, but he was consistent and good enough and in command. And for a guy that was a fifth-round draft pick that's been competing with a third-round draft pick in camp that hasn't been supported by the organization, that the organization hasn't invested in, that's gotten 1 week of reps with the first team, I'd say coming out and getting a win by multiple scores is a job well done.
Yeah. It's been since 1995 that a Browns rookie quarterback has won his debut. They were 0-17 since then. And he was out there, and, the first touchdown wasn't him. It was a special teams play, set up a couple of wildcat runs. They score. But he gets the lead and is able to settle down a little bit. And then that defense that they have just pins their ears back and goes after Geno all day. But Shadur did what he needed to do, and it was kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, when you get that much defensive support, 10 sacks and 14 other QB knockdowns, right? I mean, chances are that offense probably didn't move the football very much.
Yeah.
And look, Cleveland struggled at times to move the ball as well today, but, running game struggled a little bit early, so a lot of it I felt like was on Shadur. In the second half, running game started to gain a little bit more ground. They eventually hit that big screen touchdown for Dylan Sampson, just a little swing pass. And, this Browns defensive line is nasty. We were watching the game and just Myles Garrett, 3 more sacks, broke his own Browns record today, 18 on the season through 12 weeks. The guy's, Kevin Stefanski was asked if he ran out of superlatives for Myles, and he cut off the reporter and was like, yeah. So, a big win for the Browns team, but you could see both sides of the ball rally around Shadur a little bit because he brought a little bit more juice. There's a little bit more of a belief factor with Shadur that he was going to be able to push the ball down the field. And you could tell at times, sometimes even the receivers were a little surprised, on throws down the field that they were even getting targeted because Dylan has struggled to stretch the field at all.
Yeah, and to that point, I didn't know this, but one of the Browns reporters asked Stefanski, and said, look, the 3 longest completions of the entire season were today, by Shadur. And then the reporter says, so why don't you just name him the starter? To me, the point was, it's the vertical game, right, that they don't normally see. He wasn't ready to name a starter at this point, obviously, but gets his first touchdown pass. That was mostly Sampson, obviously. It was the swing pass out to Sampson, but gets the first one on the board.
Yeah, and again, I just thought the fact that sometimes when you can't move the ball and you're feeling frustrated because there is pressure on you, but nobody's open, you just really kind of, just dying to make a play, which I was a little nervous at some point he was going to take an ill-advised chance, but he didn't, and he stayed even keel. Look, the Browns got an early lead in this game, and it kind of allowed them to sit on the Raiders and let that defensive line do the bulk of the work. But I don't know, Brian. I mean, Kevin Stefanski's got an interesting decision now because that is arguably the best the Browns offense has looked in a couple of weeks, right? Even though the Raiders might be the worst team in the NFL, that was a step forward in their progress. So now you've got a lot of guys in the locker room going, hey, man, I like the potential of what we can do with him pushing the ball down the field. And to your point, Stefanski's notorious at not ever naming starters or giving the media anything, and we pushed him on it a couple of times. And, I asked him not even about who he was going to name, but how he was going to name. What's your process? And he said, well, I'll take my time. And then he moved on to the next question. So, it's an odd decision they have coming up. I certainly think that Shadur should be the starter in the next game for them, but we're going to find out.
We're biased, obviously. We covered Shadur for a couple of years in Colorado. Just a lot of fun to be out here and see him do his thing again. And, he talked about the journey. And, look, he's gone through something the last 6-7 months that he's never gone through before.
Right.
He's always been the guy, and the last 6-7 months he hasn't been. And he's the guy that I remember at Pac-12, maybe it was Big 12 Media Day here.
Right.
Summer of 2024, I asked him about, what did you learn from the 2023 season? It didn't go well for Colorado. He was honestly, I'm glad I went through it because I learned some things I've gone through things I've never had to go through. I think the same thing when I was listening to him today. The same thing you could probably say about the last 7 months or so. Is he's learned some things from stuff he's never had to deal with before, and I think that's part of why he's called grown, is because he learns from that stuff.
Yeah, and he's mature, right? And he has the awareness to actually analyze the situations and the experiences that happened to him, and then digest some of those lessons. And he said, look, 6-7 months ago, I don't even know if I was going to get an opportunity like this. And I think that is legitimate because, to your point, it was the first time he wasn't number one on the depth chart, in his entire life, right? Yeah. So it's been a learning process for him. I would say that because he's in the position that he's in, where he's got competition in that room, and certainly, I mean, let's just be real, he's not their guy. He wasn't drafted to be their guy.
Yeah.
He's just in this situation where I got to make every opportunity count. And Brian, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Cleveland radio is going to be talking about how Shedeur Sanders needs to be the starter. So it'll be fascinating to see how the organization decides to move forward, because if you go to him, I don't think you go away from him, but I guess you could. It's messy, right? They're 2-8. They've got 2 first-round picks next year.
They're 3-8 now.
3-8. They were 2-8 coming in, but they've got 2 first-round picks next year. So it'll be fascinating to see how they choose to handle this. Stefanski said earlier this week that if Dylan were healthy, they'd go back to Dylan, and that when Dylan is healthy, they'll go back to Dylan. So if we're going to take his words from earlier in the week, then I imagine that Gabriel will be the starter if he passes concussion protocol. However, the question is, did Shadur do enough today to force his hand to put him out there, which we're going to find out in the course of this week.
Yeah, I was just thinking, the last time Shadur was not the starter, would Shiloh have been the starter? Because they were little kids and Shiloh was older and playing quarterback, and that's kind of when Shiloh moved.
That's a good point.
Away from quarterback is when it was like clear Shadur was going to be the guy.
Yeah, that was.
So I wonder if Shiloh was the last guy he backed up.
Yeah.
So speaking of 3-8. It's the same record his father has in Colorado. We got to see Coach Prime a little bit before the game, and you know what? We asked him, or one of the reporters asked him on Tuesday, "Are you going to Vegas?" And he goes, "I haven't decided yet." I'm really glad he went. As a father myself of 4 kids, I'm glad he was here because he deserved this moment. They've been waiting for this moment for a long time. I'm glad he was here. They showed him a lot on TV. He was super excited to see a lot of this stuff, and so I'm glad Coach Prime was here to watch his son.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talked about this a little bit earlier on the podcast, that I don't think he wanted to be a distraction. And if he said, yes, I'm coming, then, it would have been, they would have rolled out the red carpet and everything. But he showed up today and, spent a little time with him before the game on the field. And I imagine went and saw him afterwards here for just a little bit. And, it's meant a lot to them. Talking to him, I know that he wishes he would have been here off of a win rather than a loss. Certainly still perturbed after last night's loss to Arizona State. But, yeah, this is an amazing opportunity. They showed him a ton on the broadcast. And, this is one of those moments that you just don't forget. And, look, you're a father. I'm not, right? I can only imagine how rewarding that feels, even when your kid goes up to the plate at T-ball, let alone gets his first NFL start. So, really cool day for the Sanders family. Bucky was here, and they had a good contingent here, and everybody was here to support. And hopefully there's many more games to support in the future.
And I doubt Coach Prime took the entire day off. I imagine he got some work done on the plane.
Oh,
we'll get some work done on the plane home.
Yeah.
So, obviously, anything else from this? That's probably it, right?
Well, I mean, this stadium is I will say their press box is nicer than Folsom Field. That
every press box is nicer than Folsom Field. Come on.
Yeah, the NFL is definitely a different experience than college.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brian, I mean, worth the trip. And yeah, you and I are going to be tired, but really cool. It was the first start for a Colorado quarterback in almost 21 years, and he got the win. So pretty big deal for Shadur, the Sanders family, and for the Browns organization.
Yeah, we'll be back this next week and talk about the Buffs, which we normally do, because they got not a big game. They just got a game this next week against Kansas State to wrap up the season. But we'll be back in our normal environment this next week. But good seeing you here in Vegas.
Yeah.